Dear learners, a very warm welcome to all of you for this session. Today we will be discussing profiling victims or survivors of human trafficking. We have understood that trafficking is not by choice but by compulsions out of vulnerability. So when we discuss that a person who has been trafficked is not an accused, not a person who should be convicted of an offense. That person is a vulnerable person. Out of his vulnerability, he has been forced to work as a person in domestic help, in labor hazardous employments, or in a massage parlor, for pornographic sites, for giving his or her organs. So we will be discussing how will you profile a victim. As you remember, we have also discussed how to profile an offender. Do we have tags? Can I tag a person that he is a victim of human trafficking, or he or she is a survivor of human trafficking? If the answer is no, then how will you know that this person may be a person who has been trafficked, or this person may be a person who is a survivor of human trafficking? So for this, we will be thinking about a lot of society images wherein we move in the society, we move on the roads, we move in the trains, in planes, by rickshaw, by auto, and then we see a lot of people around us. So can we label these people? And if we can label these people, who are these people? These are the people who are vulnerable. Vulnerable means that they are vulnerable in the hands of the society, in the government. So out of their vulnerability, out of their, it can be poverty, it can be unemployment, it can be nothing for sustenance, it can be non-availability of the resources, it can be non-recognition of oneself. So can you label these people who are not in pictures? They can be sex workers who have no voices. So a sex worker is a sex worker out of choice or out of compulsion. If the sex worker is a sex worker out of compulsion, then he is vulnerable or she is vulnerable and victim of human trafficking. Children in need of care and protection. We find a lot of children on the streets, lot of children coming out of calamity or natural disasters or man-made disasters. So we find children on the streets, we find them in dhaba, we find them in jhuggi and jhoparis. So clusters, we find them, and then we find women, we find old people, we find disabled people. So can we just put a label of somebody who can be a victim of human trafficking to them? So can a government issue an I-card stating that you are vulnerable, or you are a person who can be trafficked, or somebody who has been left over? So left over by his own family members. You must have seen lot of old people in old age homes. You must have seen lot of children in foster care, in orphanage, and you must have seen women and men on roads, in clusters, in these institutions where they are kept, the homeless people are kept, the night shelters. So we find all these people, but we cannot label them because we do not have a policy of labeling a person as a victim or survivor of human trafficking, or a person who can become a victim or survivor of human trafficking. Displaced people cannot be labeled. Displacement can be because of any reason. I just said that it can be man-made reason, it can be a natural disaster. You must have seen floods. So in Bihar, lot of villages are suffering because of this flood situation. If the stakeholders are not able to rescue the people, are not able to provide them the medical needs, the physical needs, the safety needs, then there may be a chance that a trafficker having nexus there may use these people's vulnerability and traffic them. So it is not that somebody is vulnerable at one point of time and he is not vulnerable or she is not vulnerable at the other point of time. A person may be vulnerable out of situations. Then people who do not have any identity. Lot of people in India do not have any identity because they are not registered in the population register. They do not have voter ID, passport, then bank account, Aadhaar card, PAN card or any other government document to prove their identity. So people who have migrated from one place to another, people who are unemployed and then they leave their locations, they leave their villages and go to a different place to work, may or may not have valid papers to prove their existence. People on the streets, how many of us know that how many people are on streets in Delhi? Do we have a data for that? How many people are working in unorganized sectors? How many people are working in organized sectors? How many people are working as daily workers or on contractual labor? So do we have the exact figure? I just open a government website and I am able to access all these details. How many people are disabled? Disability can be mental, disability can be physical. And disability can also be a mindset. I am not able to use my computer well, so that can be a disability. Or the stakeholders are not able to access or understand my needs and provide me opportunity so that I may also grow. So somebody is disabled because they are not able to think as per my needs. Then migrated people who move in groups or in clusters or two people just move. Poor people, they don't know the law of the land. They are uneducated people. Out of poverty, they are deprived of the basic resources or the basic facilities, but they are Indian citizens. They do not have their voices because they are vulnerable people. So can we label all these poor people? And below poverty line and above that line, what is the yardstick which can ascertain that a person who is above poverty line will not become vulnerable in the hands of the trafficker or in the hands of situations or being trafficked? So can we label all these people? We have illiterate people. Reading and writing is just an initial start. People who are not educated, who do not have quality education, even after the Right to Education Act, even after Article 21A, which talks about free and compulsory education, still if we have illiteracy, if we do not have legal education, ignorance of law is no excuse. But how many people have that legal literacy in India or literacy in India? So are these illiterate people can be said that they are the victims and survivors of human trafficking, so they should be labeled as vulnerable people. Then people without legal knowledge, I just said that okay, you can read, you can write, but is reading and writing sufficient? Or is that a starting point for a government, for a welfare state to take into consideration different aspects of quality education? We are talking about Sustainable Development Goals 2030. So, do we have a yardstick for calculating that, okay, reading and writing should be clubbed with this much of quality education at all levels? Then unemployed people, people who do not have jobs. I may be a postgraduate, I may be a 10th pass, I may be a 6th fail, but I do not have a job. So all these unemployed people or people who register in the employment forum for employment, can the government give them a tag of being vulnerable? Then people who are using technology without knowledge, a very important point. You know, we all are using technology without knowing the benefits and the cautions which we should take care while using technology. So if I am not a cyber expert, I am not able to handle the technological vulnerabilities, then do you think that small children who have started studying on laptop, mobile devices, iPads, will be able to address the issues of technological vulnerabilities? So is a child vulnerable at home? Because the child is using technology to his advantage or to her advantage without knowing the precautions for using that tool. Bonded laborers. We have a law on bonded laborers in India which prohibits bonded labors. But still we find, that it is very easy to take money from a private money lender, and then that private money lender, in the name of interest, keeps on exploiting the entire family for generations. So I am not a financial expert, so I cannot decide and ascertain whether the interest which has been charged is perfectly fine, whether the amount which I have paid or my ancestral have paid is deducted from the amount. Then we have child laborers. Somebody who is working with the entire family in your farm, at your, house, or in your factory. So even the child is working. Or somebody who is working for you sends his child to work in your home, in your factory, in your industry, in your farmhouse, or anywhere. It can be hazardous employment also. We have seen children in dhabas, in factories, in hazardous employment places, in bidi udyog, in carpet industries, in bangle making industries. So we have Child Labor Prohibition Act, still we have child laborers in India. People in debt. So people who have taken loan from somebody and then they are not able to repay that loan. Can we tag these people as vulnerable people or victims or survivors of human trafficking? Then people staying in and around disturbed places. So people who are staying in Jammu and Kashmir, Northeast, some places which are disturbed or near the borders. So are these people not vulnerable? Because at an order they are told that they have to just leave their homes. So for their safety, for the nation's security, sometimes they also leave their homes and their lands. So are these people who are living in these areas are vulnerable? Can the government say that you can be trafficked, so you just take this label of vulnerability? Or we cannot give these labels to these people. People believing in short gains. Lot of youngsters, see a lot of images, a lot of videos of very rich people, of very rich houses, farmhouses, and then within a period of time they want to become like that. But do they have the capabilities? Do they have the resources? Is a mismatch. So for short gains, if somebody lures me, somebody attracts me to a world of, fantasy, and I get lured, I get fascinated, and I believe in that person. So am I not vulnerable? If I am vulnerable, can the government give me the vulnerability card? People who are living in strained relationships. Somebody who sees, that the husband is beating the wife is beating the husband, then abusive language is used in the four walls of home. Children are beaten up. Children are not taken care of. So somebody who is living in a disturbed household is a vulnerable person. But do we have a ticket for that person? Somebody who is living in disturbed location. So if anybody is living in disturbed location, riots take place in few locations. So it may be that you are located near the borders, or located where unrest is there, or for a particular period because of riot or because of some internal fight, that place becomes a disturbed location. So are you not vulnerable? Then survivors of calamity, survivors of difficult situations. So if I am not able to control my situation, I lose my job. Am I not vulnerable? And if I am vulnerable, has the government given me any card? Then people who cannot afford their livelihood. I cannot sustain my family. So what good and bad I will be able to decide? What kind of consent, free consent, I will be able to exercise if there is a choice between food and lifestyle and something which is illegal? Then people who are suffering from transmitted disease and are living separate or are not allowed to mingle with the family members or the community. So how will they sustain? Are they not vulnerable? And if they are vulnerable, if they can be victims of human trafficking, then do we provide them the I-cards? So anybody who is suffering from any kind of disability, disability can be financial disability, disability can be mental disability. People who live in dreams, I want to become an actor, I want to become an actress. But do I have that potential of becoming an actor or an actress? Or I am able to go to the right place where I can be hired, I can work? Do I get certain training, and do we have authorized training centers, or we have training centers across India where you just see an advertisement and go? Then people who do not get the benefits of schemes by government. So it can be the central government schemes and the programs of central government or the state government, and the implementation of the schemes at the grassroots level. So if I am not able to get the benefit of these schemes, or I am unaware about these schemes, then am I not vulnerable? Because government is doing a lot as a welfare state. We have lot of schemes to ensure that nobody dies out of hunger. We have so many laws at the national and international level to address the issue of dignity and worth of a person. But still, you know, if I am not able to get the benefits of the scheme because of my vulnerability, do I get a card? Then we have a question for all of you. Can all these people be labeled? Some people will say no and some people will say yes. So all the listeners can have a different viewpoint on whether they can be labeled or they cannot be labeled. So we are talking about the entire population of India being labeled or not being labeled. And who is going to label them? The central government, the state government, the district administration, or the national commissions for different people, for SC, ST, for women, for children, for disabled people, for backward people. So are these commissions going to label you? Then we have, you know, Human Rights Commission. Will these commissions label you? The state commissions label you? The NGOs who are working in your area, will they come and label you? The community in which you are living, will that community people or the community head come and label you as a person who can be a person who will be, you know, in the hands of the trafficker, is a prospective potential of being trafficked? The administration at the local level, at the village panchayat, will they come and label you? The family where you are staying, will the head of the family label you as a person who is vulnerable? I am not able to sustain myself, so I label all my children as vulnerable children. I also label myself and as my wife as being vulnerable to the situations. The traffickers who are exploiting, who are making use of this vulnerability to maximize their profits, will they label you? Or, you know, the judiciary, all levels we have judicial system, will that criminal justice administration system will label you? And do you think that nobody will be able to label you? How to know who is vulnerable? Because vulnerability is not permanent. Vulnerable people do not stick to one position or to one place. They keep moving. Vulnerable people do not have any physical signs. So looking at my face, looking at my hand, looking at my thumb, looking at my feet, you cannot understand that I am vulnerable. I may be dressed up very well. Lot of people who were earning 2 to 3 lakhs have lost their job. So finally they have become vulnerable. Lot of people are not able to, you know, pay off their educational expenses, to sustain their family members, to pay the rent of their business houses. So vulnerability can be addressed by the stakeholders and can be removed by the stakeholders, can be minimized by the stakeholders if they work in collaboration. People who are trafficked for labor, how will you understand them? Their physical build should be good. You cannot have a laborer who is very thin and lean and, you know, not healthy. Their area can be a criteria, because at particular area we have people who are being sold as laborers. Their community life, the way they are accepted in the community or they are dejected in the community, can be ascertained by seeing them. Non-availability of basic facilities can be also a criteria where we can see that, okay, these are the people who do not get the benefits of the basic infrastructure, or there is no infrastructure. Lack of coordination between the authorities in giving, the schemes or implementing the schemes can be taken by the datas. Non-implementation of labor laws and other statutory laws can also become a reason wherein you can identify. Family abuse, disturbed married life can also be understood. Poverty can be a yardstick of understanding people who can be trafficked for labor. Then desire for a better life without taking reasoned decision. Non-availability of food, family bondage, calamity or death of an earning member. Then medical condition of the earning member. If they are not able to earn, then the children are forced to go for labor. Family sustainability needs to be fulfilled. If that is not able to be fulfilled, then you are vulnerable. Lack of awareness of programs for vulnerable people is another factor which can be addressed and can be seen that if you do not have programs for vulnerable people, then people will be vulnerable. Domestic servitude, if not handled properly, then is a reason for domestic labor. Beggars, you can see on the streets. So we have a Juvenile Justice Care and Protection of Children Act. So children in need of care and protection, if not properly dealt with, then they move as beggars. Parents who are working in hazardous employment also sometimes employ their children in the same employment. If you have no work, then whatever work you get from a person, you don't disagree because you have to sustain yourself and your family member. The demand for cheap labor and to gain from a person is high because the supply side is more and the demand is concentrated. So if more and more people need job, employment, then the labor price cannot be, as per the Minimum Wages Act. Vulnerability in deciding and understanding service condition. If I am unemployed, I don't have job, whatever job I get, I will not make a choice. Family tradition is also important. Sometimes, out of my family tradition, I work as a labor. Ignorance of law, ignorance of dignity rights or human rights. And even if you are aware, if you do not know how to get these rights, then you also become vulnerable. Carefree attitude of the family members. If I go for work and my family members do not have any objection because I am an earning member, then I will be forced to work without my choice. So in the end, I would just like to say that, for labor, if you are exploited, then it can be because of your vulnerability. We have a lot of labor laws. Labor laws are not there for the unorganized sector or the uncounted workforce. We do not have I-cards. Lot of people do not have any identity. Lot of people, do not have any say. So when you are not able to speak up, you don't have any say, then you will not be able to protect your rights. So be careful, be aware about your rights and be safe. Thank you for listening this session.